Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I'm excited to announce I've got Stephanie Sylvia Costello. She's an intimacy and relationship mentor. And today, we're going to be talking about how not to take things personally. So on that note, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today, Lyn.
It's really, really appreciated that you're taking your time out to talk to our listeners today, because I don't think we've actually drilled down on this subject before. And I think it's such an important topic to talk about. And I think once we master something like this, the sky's the limit, really, not just in personal relationships, but, you know, for success in all areas of your life, isn't it?
So true. Absolutely. Mastering how not to take things personally is quite a journey. In fact, I feel like it's a never ending journey. It's not one where you get to a destination where you've succeeded at 100%. It's a daily practice, just like meditation.
Absolutely. So talking about how not to take things personally, where do you start off, you know, when you're speaking or training people around this subject? How do you start off introducing this subject?
Great question. One of my favorite things in quick reads to go to is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. That is the quickest, easiest, most helpful way to really approach this topic, to gain a quick perspective of what does taking things personally really mean and where does that extend from. And then as we're reading into the book or taking out pieces of what the book shares, I then give the individuals I'm chatting with the opportunity to look into their own experiences in life and find where did they kind of make some blind agreements with the world that is creating this perception of taking things personally.
And I'd like to sort of narrow this down to head versus heart situation, because I think head is all about the ego and, you know, probably operating from a place of fear and therefore reacting from that place. And the heart is all about your intuition and, you know, a space of love and responding from that space. And I think depending on, you know, what you hear in the moment can depend on how you might react or respond. That I think for me indicates that if you are reacting from that headspace, your ego headspace, and from that place of fear, it's actually telling you that something needs to be healed. That's the way I look at things.
Yes, absolutely. And so, one of the things that we talk about too is between ages 2 and 6, we really learn a lot of the core behaviors and communication and emotional patterns in our childhood from our parents, both from observing our parents, from observing school, you know, other parents, other children. And so when we're being trained a certain way in ways that we don't necessarily realize too sometimes. For example, why is it inappropriate to talk to the person in the stall next to you in a public bathroom? Right? There's no rules anywhere that says you can't do that. It's just something that you don't do. And it's a privacy thing, but no one's ever said it's a privacy thing. It's just something you feel and you observe as a kid. So you follow that. Maybe if it's a tiny little toddler looking under the stall, it's like, no, don't do that. You know, that's right. And so they might learn from us, you know, correcting them as kids. But that's just one example of how we kind of we have these beliefs that we are ingrained in us that we never really talked about, read anywhere, or it's more of just an experience and a sense of knowing. And so when we get stuck in those fear-based mindsets, right, especially if there was maybe disconnects in communication between parents or a divorce or some sort of, you know, relationship malfunction as a young kid or growing up, that can create a lot of fear in us as we get older and engaging in our own relationships. We can unintentionally replicate those patterns if we aren't aware of them.
So could you give us, obviously without mentioning any names, would you be able to give us like a case study, that of your experience with either a client or somebody that you know, of what it was that they were taking personally, how that played out, and how you can overcome that?
Such a great question. So I'm thinking of an empty nester of a client that I was working with. She's an empty nester. She's married. She is a grandma as well. And a lot of her struggles around communication specifically and understanding what her partner was trying to say to her, the both of them kind of had that disconnect. And some of it was his upbringing, some of it was her upbringing. And for her, in her upbringing, her parents did a lot of, she was the youngest in the family, the only girl as well. And so her parents did a lot of, oh, princess this and princess that, and princess always gets what she wants, and kind of really shaming her, because being an only female, that seems to be something that they struggled with as a family. And so she's growing up and she's got these beliefs that she doesn't fit in, and she is a princess and no one's going to like her because she is acting like a princess and she's always getting what she wants. So she would hear that sometimes from her husband through his messaging, but he never intended it to be sent that way, right? He was just saying his observations. Now he had his own side of things that he was hearing her, and what he was hearing is not what she was intending because of how he experienced his childhood. But I didn't work with him, so I can't really speak to his side of it.
So could you give us an example of what, I suppose he was saying that she was responding to as being, something that she received as negative?
Her favorite thing is to go to the beach. And one of the things she loves about the beach is time isn't a thing. Responsibilities aren't a thing. When she goes to the beach, she doesn't want to have to worry about anyone or think about anyone or do anything, but just focus on being on the beach. And her partner really struggled with that, because if her partner needed something or had an idea of a time frame for the day, and you go to the beach now and we'll do this later and we'll do that later, well, she would say, okay, yeah, we'll do that, but she wouldn't necessarily stay committed to what she said she would do, because at the beach it's just her freedom space. She feels free there. And so whenever she wouldn't necessarily follow her words, which is something that we worked on, he would take that as a direct insult. You don't care about me. You don't love me. Or when he would say to her, I really want this, I don't want you to go to the beach, she would feel like he didn't love her because he didn't want her to feel that freedom. She would take it as he didn't want her to feel that freedom. He didn't want her to go enjoy herself. He wanted her to be miserable, right? Which neither of those messages were true. It's just they both were wanting different things, and coming to a workable compromise was something that they needed some help figuring out how to do.
And what was that workable compromise?
Absolutely. So one thing is, the piece of not taking things personally. So if he was upset that she was going to the beach, she now can freely go to the beach and not take it personally. If he's upset about something, it's okay to be upset. I hear you that you're upset, but I'm going to be healthily selfish in this moment, and I'm going to go to the beach, right? And then if there was a time where she decided to be healthily selfless, and he asked for her to do something, she might then compromise with him. And so understanding each other's dynamics of healthily selfish or healthily selfless and giving and receiving in the relationship, they were able to really gain some clarity around that. So she was able to explain to him about what the beach meant to her and means to her, and how important it is for her happiness to go to the beach. And he's able to respect that, right? Okay, I understand you need that, so I'm going to respect that you need that, and know that at some point it's going to be reciprocated. And being able to build that trust and that healthy reciprocation was really, it's not necessarily the workable compromise in the situation, it's the workable compromise overall with that healthy give and receive in their relationship.
Excellent. I love that example. So for them, it was, like you say, training them to look at it in a loving way, how,
Yes.
because quite often we receive things, and if we automatically feel our hackles rise, that's when we're in our heads and in our ego, isn't it? And that's where we're coming from, that place of fear and wanting to react, and knowing that, that it's triggered something, but it's not necessarily the partner that's triggered it. It's something that's been unhealed from our past, and like you said, for that particular client, it was probably because she was made to feel like she was being diva-ish, or acting like a princess, but not in a positive way. It was more, perceived by her as that she was acting out, by the sound of things, as a child.
Absolutely. And even if in that acting out message is a belief that she knew wasn't true, but still to this day was struggling with navigating.
It's interesting, isn't it, how we're not even educated around being mindful of our own thoughts, or parented about being mindful of what's running through our heads that could be, having a negative impact on the results that we're creating for ourselves.
Yeah, it is definitely a pandemic, in my opinion. We have classes like gym class and food class and here in the United States with, public schools, but we don't have an emotional class. We don't have a class teaching 5-year-olds how to talk to 5-year-olds. And nowadays, 5-year-olds are watching these superhero movies that are these live action, very intense movies. So they're 5 years old, but they have such an awareness of the world that a 5-year-old can't really understand. So now they take that and they go to school and they act those things out, and they're saying things that they really don't understand what they're saying, or acting things out they really don't understand what they're doing. And so it's incredibly difficult for humans to be able to bond and have that give and take. It's an exercise, just like going to the gym. We have to exercise understanding our own thoughts and our own brain and how our brains work, that nature versus nurture and so on.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you mentioned, doing things in a healthy way, because it isn't, is it, selfish to be somebody that's making their self-care a priority, because without making ourselves a priority to some degree and focusing on our own well-being, we're not going to be able to give our best to our partners or anybody else for that matter, are we?
So couldn't have said it any better. Selfish is not a dirty word. That is one of my favorite sayings. Being selfish, there's only a level of energy that you have to give, right? And so if you're dumping all of your energy in one bucket and not enough in the other buckets, that bucket's going to be overflowing, and you're going to be, basically, if you think about a bank, right? You put enough money in, you can only take a certain amount out. Well, if you're not putting enough into the bank and you're withdrawing and withdrawing and withdrawing, you're going to have all these late fees, which are going to result in our body, which is, those late fees equal disease and pain and sadness. And our body starts to say, hey, I'm breaking down because I'm not being fed enough energy, enough love, enough food and water and all these other things. It's fascinating to me that when I'm working with clients on the time that they're dedicating to their day, and lunch is that's the first thing off the list. Oh, that's easy. That I can negotiate lunch. I don't need lunch. It's like, no, you can't.
Yeah, I agree, because I think any health symptoms are usually a result of our body telling us, it's in this ease, which is where the word disease comes from.
So true. So that, and you go back to the blind beliefs and the taking things personally. If there's a food challenge and you're, or not a food challenge, but a self-care challenge, there might be a level of taking things personally from an ego sense, because the brain is so stuck in, fight, flight, freeze, faint, survival. It's so stuck. The brain might be so stuck in survival because it hasn't been properly nourished, which then is going to enhance that dysfunction of taking things personally and emotionally being ramped up, because your cells are like, I'm starving, feed me, I need food now, right?
Yeah, and it's important, even from like you said, regardless of what else is happening in our life, to take responsibility for making sure we get enough food, hydration, sleep, exercise, and everything else, isn't it?
So amazing. Absolutely. 100%. And then to add a little bit more to be able to communicate that confidently is really a very powerful skill, which is often the last one. I hear all the people come to me all the time and they'll say, I really want to do this. Now, how do I do it? How do I say it? And it's like, well, you say it. Well, what do you mean I just say it? It's like, yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? Obviously, you want to make sure you're being respectful and you have that tone of love, but just saying what you're wanting is the first step. And most people are like, but I can't, then they're going to get mad at me. And there's a lot of fears around what might happen. It's like, yeah, those all might happen. And if they happen, we'll figure out how to navigate it. But you got to start somewhere, and saying it is the best place to start.
I agree. And unfortunately, I can vouch for this myself. I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I can remember my parents almost training me saying I want as being something negative, because, I used to get the response from my parents, I want, don't get.
Interesting. I can't think of some of the statements. Oh, if you have a food in your belly, a roof over your head, and clothes on your back, so you have everything you need. Right. You weren't allowed to want. And that is definitely, and even, hugs, you weren't allowed to want hugs because our parents clearly, I'll speak for mine. My parents were not taking care of themselves. So a child asking them for a hug was like a child asking them to give them whatever energy they had left over, because they weren't doing, there was so much hustling and bustling. To go back to the communication piece around it, and being able to say it, if genuinely coming out and saying it is too much of a challenge, write it out. Like, figure out what it is do I want, and what it is it that I am going to ask for, because there's a head versus heart, right? There's stuff in our head that is like, oh, okay, I thought I wanted that. It sounded pretty, or it looked pretty in my head, but in reality, it just doesn't work out. So that's where what I call a head trash purge is a great opportunity to really gain clarity, knowing what we all know we don't want. So write it all out. What don't you want? And then translate that. Okay, if I don't want this, that means that I want this, right? And being able to really gain that clarity is helpful to then approach the conversation of saying it to the person.
And it's always got to be from what you just said, that place of about you, rather than pointing the finger and saying it's about them, because then it's not going to be received well. So rather than saying, oh, you never take me out, it's better to say, I would love to go out, because that's making it about you rather than about them.
And so basically, in making it about you, you're assertively communicating instead of being accusatory. You're not doing good enough, right? You didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's like, okay, maybe that's true. And if it is true, then hopefully at some point you can talk about the differences of what each other are doing. But in the beginning, it's very important to start with, I want X, I want Y, this is how I crave to be connected, or be bonded, or be touched. Whatever it might be, this is how I crave to engage with my partner. There's a lot of making it I focus, not in a way that it's like, it's all about me, right?
No.
Right. But there's a level of, what is it that you want? What is it that they want? And what's the middle ground? And being able to really navigate that conversation with ease is one of my main goals in the work that I do.
Excellent. Love it. And I always give this as a bit of a tip as well, when you're speaking to, men, mainly we all have masculine and feminine energy, and that masculine energy is mainly embodied by the man, and the feminine energy is mainly embodied by the woman. So this is just generally about energy, but a man normally likes to receive words in the would you and will you, rather than can you or could you. So I always say to women, when you're asking him for something, it's better to ask with the W words, like would you or will you, rather than can you or could you, because of course they can or they could, but it sounds more like an ultimatum when you put it like that, whereas the would you and will you they receive it more politely, as you would. The way I like to I'll drive the point home so that women can remember is you'd never hear a man saying, can you marry me? He'd always say, will you marry me?
Oh, I love that. I've never really sat back and thought about it. I'm going to have to chew on that one and learn more about the difference in those word choices.
Absolutely. That's one of my big tips that I share, when I'm working with women, is to remember that the W words are the words that really work well with men.
Yeah.
And if you can't remember whether it's the W's or the C words that work the best, remember the phrase, about when he asks you to marry him, he would never say, can you or could you? He'd always say, will you?
So powerful. Such powerful little tidbits like that, if we could just have a Wikipedia for the right way to say something.
Absolutely. I can't take credit for that. I think it might have been actually from the John Gray book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, that I probably picked up, or one of those sorts of, super extraordinary relationship experts that I've learned my craft from over time. I can't, as I say, take the credit for that, but I've always remembered it.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome. So how not to take things personally? What are we really saying when we're advising and educating people around that particular phrase, Stephanie, do you think?
Open mind, having an open mind, and just being very aware that your beliefs are thoughts that you stopped thinking about, thoughts that are just ingrained in you, that are subconscious, that are made on a daily basis without realization. And so the more we can be as aware and as current in the present moment as we can be, the more we can really embrace an open mind and work on active listening and in the conversation, so there can be a reciprocation in the relationship.
Yeah, perfectly said. I think it's all about, becoming more and more aware of your self-talk and your verbal loud talk as well. What language you're actually speaking, not only about yourself, but about others and in particular your partner as well. Yeah. And understanding that if it's not being received particularly well, that might be because they've got stuff that needs healing, but also it could be the way you're communicating it.
Yes, exactly. And there's always a middle ground there. It's always a little bit of both, and as long as the two parties can really come to a understanding that there's acceptance, that there's certain things you cannot change in a situation, and there's certain things you can work on. Not that the person doesn't want to change, not that the person isn't trying to change. It's just there's some radical acceptance around what just is, and letting it just is. But what isn't just is, what can we actually shift so that we're both can continue our happiness in the connection.
I think it's also important to realize that, what is worth getting upset about, the thing is that there's no point sweating the small stuff, basically, is there, in relationships.
100%.
I feel that quite often, there's little niggly things like if it's just a minor thing, then it's sometimes worth asking yourself, is it worth letting this go, or is this going to become a bit of an issue for me if it doesn't get resolved?
For example, we have a little pantry area that has our stove and a few cabinets and our refrigerator. And if there's one spot in the house that needs to be clean, it's that spot, that and the toilets. The toilets we have 3 tiny humans, so the toilets need to be clean.
Yeah.
In that spot. And those are my non-negotiables. Like, I don't care what you have going on. I don't care what the rest of the house looks like. These 2 areas need to be picked up after you go and use them. And so when I enter this area, I need a clean cabinet, clean counter, clean stove, right? Clean toilet. If you made a mess with it after you use, don't just get up and walk away. Clean the toilet, so the next time someone goes to use it, it's clean themselves for them as well. So There's little non-negotiables that you can really set that are actually important to you versus the little bits of like my husband's socks that just get taken off and thrown around the house, in my room, in the kids' room, just on the stairs. They're just always crumpled up socks just laying around the entire house. I choose not to pick that battle. Yeah.
And he wonders why he's probably not got many actual pairs that fit together.
Exactly.
Or maybe he's not bothered about that. Men don't seem to be bothered about that sort of stuff, don't they? They seem to, whether they're colorblind or not, they don't seem to be as mindful of
minor details,
things matching the way women do.
Yeah, those are minor self-care details that men inside out, holes in them, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Did you buy new socks?
Yeah, it doesn't really enter their head as being a priority, does it? And again, we're stereotyping, but it's understanding that there is a difference between men and women. We do think differently, we do look differently. Men are not hairy women, as I like to say. And we do behave differently. So it's understanding that there is going to be communication differences as well. And so not trying to expect him to behave or respond in a way that you would necessarily expect another woman would in the same situation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we both have, I'm speaking to my own experience because I have been married to a male who identifies as a male, right, for 11 years. Well, we've been together 11 years now. And so that's just my experience. And those are the terms we use in our household. With that said, we do our best to be very inclusive, and the people that he talks to, he can even go, his friends, he can go talk to them and say the same thing about the details that I might prefer versus the details that his male friends might prefer. And we do see a lot of commonalities in the relationships that we engage in naturally, that just kind of come between work and friends and, the whole, our local community. There is a lot of similarities, and a woman can get together and talk about being annoyed that the socks are laying around, and the guy could care less about them. My husband, usually they're talking about fixing up something in the home, or taking care of the chimney. They're talking about the more
sports.
Yes, exactly. Or dutiful, or not even, I don't even know. Yeah, the sports, we'll stick to that. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the more around the doing and the action focused things, because that is part of the masculine energy, that to most males embody, especially in opposite sex relationships. But understand that sometimes as well, that if you have got, any niggles, or you're just feeling generally that, you're not been looking after yourself in terms of your own self-care, sometimes it's better to pick a girlfriend to talk to rather than dumping that on your partner, isn't it? Sometimes, some things are better discussed amongst your girly friends.
If there's a level of therapy that needs to be had, absolutely. Talk to some friends that really can understand your perspective. If there's a level of action that you're desiring, maybe try to find a guy that is not emotionally invested in the relationship and talk to them and ask them what might be their perspective on the situation, so that you can really get some insight from potentially your husband's perspective that you won't get from the female counterparts.
Exactly. Yeah. A very, very valid point. So, Stephanie, any final words of wisdom around this subject of how not to take things personally that you would like to share with the audience before we start wrapping things up?
Do your best to figure out what it is you want and how to say that with confidence to anyone that you're in a relationship with.
And it's important not to worry about rocking the boat, because I think sometimes we can be in the people-pleasing mindset, can't we? Which again isn't a healthy trait to embody, because then the resentments can build up. So don't be afraid to rock the boat with your partner, because at the end of the day they might not receive it very well in the moment, but you'll ultimately, I feel, have that more respect from them than trying to tiptoe around the situation or, not talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
So Stephanie, for the benefit of our audience, I know that you said off air that you'd got something that you could offer as a great gift for them today.
Yeah. So if there's listeners looking to learn how to assertively communicate, really gain that confidence and do it with ease, we have a free checklist they're able to access at safetyinfreedom.com/assertive communication. Excellent.
And as always, we always put our guests' other contact information in the show notes. So you'll find all of Stephanie's information and contact information as well in the show notes if you want to get in touch via any other platform. So again, thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming onto the podcast and sharing your wise words of wisdom. I thoroughly enjoyed the topic and enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
And on that note, listeners, I'll leave you with true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.